Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Kohlfarber, and today we're going to do Lesson 12. Please open your workbook to page 208. It might be helpful if you have a calculator handy today also, so please get that out. Our goal for today is to use ratio tables to show equivalent ratios like a pro. So we're going to just do kind of some last practice on ratios and rate tables. First, to warm our brain up, we're going to do a little number talk, and it says here to find the product of these four math problems mentally. So I want you to put down your pencil, push your calculator away, and I want you to try to think, if I had no pencil and no calculator, how would I solve these four problems? So we have 1/3 times 21, 5.6 times 1/8, and 1/4 times 5.6. Please pause the video, come up with an answer for each one of those mentally, and then push play once you're ready. Here's what I was thinking for these four problems. Since I'm doing 1/3 of 21, I thought about breaking 21 into three groups. So if this whole thing represents 21, and I broke it into three groups, how much would be in each group? 3 times what gives me 21? It's 7. So if I'm just wanting 1/3 of 21, I would be wanting one group. So 1/3 of 21 is 7. Okay, now for 1/6 times 21, it's the same, except now instead of three groups, I'm breaking up 21 into 6 groups. So if I start with 3 and then break each of those thirds in half, now I have 6 pieces. So how much would be in each piece if it was 1/6? Well, I know that what I did up here was 1/3, and 2 of these together equals 7. But I don't want 2, I just want 1. So I want 7.
Put 46 to the cafeteria, 46 to the cafeteria.
Sorry for the bus interruption. Anyway, so 2 pieces would be 7 because 2 pieces is 1/3. So I want half of 1/3, which is 1/6, or half of 7. So how much is half of 7? 3.5, that's right. 1/6 of 21 is 3.5. Now, if you thought of a different way to do these, that's totally fine. There's more than one ways to do this. This was just what I came up with. Alright, so on these two, I want to remind you of something before we talk about the answer. I want to remind you, actually I'm going to write it up here. I want to remind you that timesing something 1/8 is exactly the same as dividing by 8. Similarly, timesing something by 1/4 is exactly the same as dividing by 4. Both of those are exactly the same. So if I look down here, 5.6 times is exactly the same as 5.6 divided by 8. This one, we have 5.6 times 1/4, which is the same thing as 5.6 divided by 4 for that one. And you'll notice that the relationship here that 8 is double 4. So basically, we're taking 5.6 and we're dividing it into 8 groups. And then we're taking 5.6 and dividing it into 4 groups. So I'm going to work on the 4 first. That's a little bit easier for my brain to wrap around. So if this whole thing is, I'm going to change it to dollars, $5.60, because my brain does good with money. So I'm going to half it first. So this half and this half. So I'm going to figure out what's half of $5.60. Well, half of $5 is $2.50, and half of 60 cents is 30 cents. So if I put that together, that's $2.80. So $2.80 for that half, and $2.80 for that half. Now I'm going to half that again so I can get my 4 pieces. So I'm going to half $2.80. Half of $2 is $1. Half of 80 cents is 40 cents. So I've got $1 in each one of these boxes. So $1.40 plus $1.40 plus $1.40 plus $1.40 gets me my $5.60. So 5 points, or $5.60, divided by 4, or divided up into 4 chunks, is $1.40. Now if I look at this one, I have again into 8, so I would be halving each one of these fourths. So 5.6 divided by 8 would just be half of 5.6 divided by 4. So I would want to take this fourth, this piece right here, and divide it in half again. So I need to half $1.40. So half of $1 is 50 cents. Half of 40 cents is 20 cents. Put that together, that's 70 cents. So 5.60 cents divided up into 8 chunks is 70 cents. Okay, now we are ready to do 12.2, comparing taco prices. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit. So it says, use the table to help you solve these problems. Explain or show your reasoning. So I'm going to take a look at the table. I have number of tacos down this side and price in dollars down this side. So it says, and paid $6. At this rate, how many tacos could he buy for $15? Okay, so let's go ahead and use our table. So this table is going to be about Noah. Okay, so Noah bought 4 tacos for $6. And we want to figure out how many tacos he could get for $15 into a 15. Now, what can we multiply 6 by to get to 15? Nothing that's a whole number. So let's half it first and get to 3 and see if that will help us. So let's half it and go to $3. Half of 6 is $3 and half of 4 is 2. So 2 tacos cost him $3. Now I can get to $15 a little bit easier because 3 times 5 is 15. So over here, if I do 2 times 5, that will get me 10. What can he get for $15? 10 tacos. So we'll write up here 10 tacos for $15. Now number 2 says Jada's family, we're talking about a different person. Jada's family bought 50 tacos for a party and paid $72. So Jada got 50 tacos for $72. Were Jada's tacos the same price as Noah's? Well, let's figure out how much Noah paid for 50 tacos. And so far we've only got him up to 10, so we need to get Noah up to 50. So I'm going to put a 50 in here and then start looking for a relationship. How can I turn a 4, a 2, or a 10 into a 50? So hopefully you notice that we can take 10, to it by 5, and get 50. So that means I'm going to take this 15 times it by 5 and get, what's 15 times 5? Good, $75. So Noah, when he bought 50 tacos, paid $75. So were Jada's tacos the same price as Noah's? No, they were not. Whose were cheaper? That's right, Jada's were $3 cheap. Jada's 50 tacos were $3 cheaper than Noah's. Okay, let's move on. Please turn to page 207 now. We're going to do 12.3, talking about hourly wage. So this says Lynn is paid $90 for 5 hours of work. She used the table to calculate how much would be paid at this rate for 8. So let's look what we have in the table so far. We have amount earned in dollars on this side, so this is all dollars, and then the time or the hours on this side. And so it says she had $90 for 5 hours, and we see that here, $90 to 5 hours. And she's trying to figure out 8 hours. So she's trying to figure out this one, 8 hours. So question number 1 says, what is the meaning of the 18 that appears in the table? So here's the 18. What does that 18 tell us? Is it on the dollar side or side? It's on the dollar side, so it's talking about $18. But $18 for what? $18 goes with this 1. And what does this 1 mean? That's right, it's 1 hour of work. So that 18 means that in 1 hour, Lynn was paid 18. Question number 2. Question number 2 says, why was the number 1/5 as a multiplier? So here's the number 1/5. I see it right there, and I see it right here. So it looks like they took the 90 and they timesed it by 1/5 and got 18. And they took the 5 and timesed it by 1/5. So why did they choose 1/5 right there? So the reason they chose 1/5 is because we wanted to take this 5 and to a 1. And 5 times 1/5 equals 1. So we know that 5 times 1/5 equaled 1, and we were trying to get 1. What would be another way to take a 5 and turn it into a 1? Right, you could also do divided by 5, and that equals 1. And you remember on the last page, I told you that timesing by a fraction, so timesing by 1/5, is exactly the same thing as dividing by 5. So that's why we got the same answer. Number 3, explain how Lynn used this table to solve the problem. So remember, Lynn was trying to figure out how much she would be paid for 8 hours of work. Figure that out right here. But how did she figure it out? Will you please pause the video, write how Lynn figured that out, and then push play. So here's what I came up with. She figured out that the unit rate was for 1 hour of work was $18. So she started with her 90 and 5 and went to rate $18 for 1 hour of work. Then she multiplied how much she made in that 1 hour by 8 to get to 8 hours. So she just did 1 hour 8 times. So $18 8 times $4 for 8 hours of work. Now it's time for number 4. At this rate, how much would Lynn be paid for 3 hours of work? For 2.1 hours of work. So we need to go back up and we're going to put in 3 hours of work and 2.1 hours of work. And let's use something here. So how can I take one of these and get to a 3? Well, the unit rate looks like the easiest one to me. So if I go from 1 to 3, I can do times 3 is 3. So then I'm going to times 18 by 3 also. And 3 times 18 is 54. So my ratio, 3 hours of work, would get her $54. Okay, now I have my 2.1 hours of work. I'm going to use the unit rate again. I'm just going to go 1 times 2.1. 1 times 2.1 is 2.1. So then I'll take my 18 also and times it by 2.1. And this is your calculator out and punch in 18 times 2.1. And let's see how much money that is. 18 times 2.1. Did you get it? Good. I got $37.80. So, for 2.1 hours of work, she will get paid $37.80. Please turn to page 208 and we're ready to continue at 12.4, Zeno's memory card. In 2016, 8 gigabytes, GB, of portable computer memory cost $32. Here is a double number line that represents that situation. So we can see memory is on the top and the cost is on the bottom. And over here you can see that $32 was purchased you 128 bytes. One set of tick marks has already been drawn to show the results of multiplying 128 and half. So you can see those tick marks right here in the middle. And it's exactly in the middle, so we know it's half. So if I do 32 times half, what would go there? And 128 times half, what would go there? And it says label the amount of memory for those tick marks. So let's do half of 32 and write down what you get right here. And then do half of 128 and write down what you get here. Okay, so for half of 32, I got 16, and for half of 128, I got 64. Next, keep multiplying by 1/2 and drawing and labeling until you can no longer clearly label each new tick mark with a number. So we're just going to keep halving. So 16 times half, so I'm going to need to put a new tick mark halfway in between the 0 and the 16, and up there. So what is half of 16? That's right, 8. And then what's half of 64? You might need to use your calculator. Or you can do half of 60, half of 4, put that together. I got 32. Okay, we're going to keep going half again. So now I'm going to take this new space and half it. So we'll do is 4. And half of 32, which we already did. When we halved 32 here, we got 16. So 16. Okay, now we're going to half again. So we'll take this new space and half it. I think this might be our last one. So between 0 and 4, 2. And what's half of 16? 8. All right. Now if you can squeeze one more in there, let's try. Let's squeeze one more. So we'll do one more half. Half of 2 and half of 8 is 4. And that got us to the unit rate. $1 gets you 4 gigs of memory. Number 2 says, here's a table that represents the situation. Find the cost of 1 gigabyte. Oh good, we already did that in the double number line. You can use as many rows as you need. So let's collect it up here and put it into the table. So for 64 gigs, it costs $16. For 32 gigs, it costs $8. Would you go ahead and fill in the rest of that table with what we got from our number line? Pause the video and push play once you... Alright, so here's my completed table, and it says what is the cost for 1 gigabyte. So we're going to put, oh, we didn't do that. The cost for $1, or we found what $1 would buy us. We didn't get to 1 gigabyte. So we actually need to get to 1 on this side. We need 1 gigabyte. Sorry, I misread that. Okay, so this is the unit rate. This tells us that 4 gigabytes cost us $1. We want to figure out 1 gigabyte and how much that cost us. Okay, so how do I get from a... Right, I can divide by 4 or I can times by 1/4. Either way, same thing. So I need to do that on this side too. Times by 1/4. So what's 1/4 of 1? Divide 1 into 4 pieces. If you think about it as $1, if you divide $1 into 4 pieces, how much is each piece worth? Use your calculator if you need to, just put in 1 times 1/4. Okay, so I got 0.25. So 1 gigabyte costs, how much is 0.25? That's right, 25 cents. 1 gigabyte costs 25 cents. And then question number 3, did you prefer the double number line or the table for solving this problem? So I want you to write, I preferred the double number line or the table because you finished that. Okay, so I preferred, did you prefer the double number line or the table? And then in this line, tell me why. Pause the video and push play once you have that sentence completed. Please turn to page 210, pause the video, and read this lesson summary to yourself. It should take you just a couple minutes. Push play once you've completely read the lesson summary on page 210. Now it's time to get started on the Lesson 12 practice problems, which are on page 211. Priya collected 2,400 grams of pennies in a fundraiser. Each penny has a mass of 2.5 grams. How much money did Priya raise? If you get stuck, consider using the table. So they told us that 1 penny weighs 2.5 grams and that she has 400 grams. So we need to figure out what goes right here. How many pennies is that anyway? So we need to get from a 1 to whatever this is. Okay? So we're going to go in steps. So I'm going to get you on the first step, and then you're going to figure it out by yourself. Okay? So the first thing I think we should do is probably double this one, and we'll see where that gets us. So let's times 2 on that first step. And if you're not in a table, then try either halving something or doubling something, and usually that might get you started, at least in the right direction. So 2.5 times 2 is 5, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now that I have a 5 here, that helps me a lot, because I know that 2,400 is divisible by 5. So that's going to be, there's going to be something that I can multiply 5 by, 2,400. So what are we going to multiply times 5? 5 times what gets us 2,400? Now, if you can't make that jump yet, why don't you try going to 10 or getting to 100, and then you can do 2,400. So 10 would just be double this. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4. Then you could always get to 100. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times 4 is 40. And now maybe you can find a relationship between 100 and 2,400. Okay, so you complete that one by yourself. Number 2. Kieran reads 5 pages in 20 minutes. He spends the same amount of time per page. How long will it take him to read 11 pages? Okay, so we have a table set up for us. It says he reads 20 minutes, 5 pages. And what we want to figure out is the 11. Okay, so you're going to look for a relationship. How can I turn, which will be the same thing I do over here. And then how can I turn a 1 into an 11, which will be the same thing I do over there. Okay, you do number 2 by yourself. Number 3. Mai is making personal pizzas. For 4 pizzas, she uses 10 ounces of cheese. How much cheese does Maya use per pizza? So per pizza is talking about 1 pizza. So we want to put a 1 here, and we want to figure out what goes with the 1. And then it says at this rate, how much cheese will she need for 15? So you might need your calculator, but once again, you're just going to look for those relationships. So how do I turn a 4 into a 1? And then you'll do the same thing here. And then how do I turn a 1 into a 15? And you'll do the same thing there. And that will get you the answer that goes right there, and the answer that goes right. Go ahead and complete number 3 on your own. Question number 4. Claire is paid $90 for 5 hours of work. How many seconds does it take her to earn 25 cents? So for this one, that you're going to need to remember that this is in hours, and it's asking you for seconds. So remember that 1 hour is 60 seconds. So 5 hours would be 5 60 seconds, so 60 times 5, which is 300 seconds. And that's hours. So that should help you solve number 4. And you might want to set up a ratio. So $90 for 5 hours, and you're wanting seconds. So instead of 5 hours, I'm going to put 300 seconds. And you're trying to figure out 25 cents is how many seconds. Number 5. A car travels 20 miles in 1/2 hour at a constant speed. Sorry, I misread that. A car that travels 20 miles in half an hour at a constant speed, at the same speed as a car who travels 30 miles in 3/4 of an hour at a constant speed. So we're going to explain why that's. So we have 2 cars. We have car number 1, that'll be our red car, and car number 2, that'll be our blue car. Okay, so red car is 20 miles in 1/2 hour, and blue car is traveling 30 miles in 3/4 of an hour. And we want to know, is that the same? Our hours are not, we both have hours, but it's not the same amount of hours. So let's get this to the same amount of hours. I want you to remember that 1/2 is the same as 2/4. So I'm going to rewrite this 20 miles in 2/4 of an hour. And let's get this down to 1/4. So I have 2/4. So if I halved, it'll be 1/4 of an hour. So half of 2/4 is 1/4. So half of 20 is, that's right, 10. So she's going to go 10 miles in 1/4 of an hour. Now let's take the blue car and get it down to 1/4. Okay, so we need to get to 1/4 of an hour. How many 1/4s are in 3/4? That's right, 3. So if I take this 3/4 and I divide it by 3, I get 1/4. So I'm also going to divide my 30 by 3. So 30 divided by 3 is. So the red car is going 10 miles in 1/4 of an hour, and the blue car is going in 1/4 of an hour. And what do you know? That is exactly the same. Number 6. Lynn makes her favorite juice blend by mixing cranberry juice with apple juice in the ratio shown on the double number line. Complete the diagram to show smaller and larger batches that would taste the same blend. So basically here you're just filling in the empty spots on the tick marks. So go ahead and do that by yourself. All right, last but not least.